He gave shape to a generation of sound without being its pin-up boy. While others took center stage, he constructed the soul of the music behind the glass. From silent studios to world stages, Benny Andersson lived through the rise, the unraveling, and the rebirth of one of pop's most iconic bands. But the story he's only now telling isn't about disco balls or sequins. It's about exhaustion, regret, fractured love, and the painful silence that followed the applause. After decades of speculation, Benny speaks. His truth is deeper, sadder, and far more revealing than anyone could have anticipated. Before the world ever danced to the beat of Dancing Queen or wept to the melancholy of The Winner Takes It All, Benny Andersson was already busy shaping the invisible foundation of what would become one of pop music's most enduring legacies. Born on December 16, 1946 in the Vasan district of Stockholm, Benny grew up in a working-class household where music was not a career path but rather a valued tradition. His father, a civil engineer, and his grandfather, who was a self-taught musician, introduced him to the accordion at age 6. That humble instrument opened up a world of fascination with melody and harmony that would never leave him. Unlike many of his peers who longed for stardom, Benny was driven not by a need to be seen. Rather, he was more interested in understanding how music worked, from Bach's mathematical structure to the earthy storytelling in Swedish folk songs. He taught himself piano by ear and could mimic melodies after only hearing them once or twice. By age 10, he was playing for family gatherings and school concerts. His innate sensitivity to tone and emotion, not showmanship, made him a compelling child performer. In 1964, aged only 18, Benny joined Swedish rock band Heapstars, the group that would rechristen itself the Swedish Beatles. Almost overnight, their sound matured with his arrival. They started hitting the top of the Swedish charts with songs like Sunny Girl and Wedding, both written by Benny. These early chart successes not only demonstrated his knack for crafting memorable melodies, but also put him at the center of studio arrangement and live performance. Soon, he was referred to as the musical brain of the band, while he quietly developed an understanding of the commercial and technical sides of the industry. Then there was this fateful night in 1966. Benny met Bernos while both were performing at a mutual friend's party. Bern, a member of the folk-pop group the Hoot Nanny Singers, shared Benny's love of harmony, arrangement, and detail. Their jam session that evening led to an instant musical partnership. Over the next few years, they started writing together, experimenting with various styles and structures, and even composing songs for other Swedish artists. Their collaborative bond grew strong, not just because of mutual respect, but because they balanced each other perfectly. Benny, the emotional composer, Bern the witty lyricist. By the early 1970s, Benny and Bern were not only co-writers, but also partners in life with two fellow musicians, Agnia Feldskog, a chart-topping Swedish solo artist, and Annie Fred Frida Lingstad, a jazz-turned-pop singer with a powerful alto voice. Their joint musical venture took form under the lengthy name Bern and Benny, Agnetha, and Annie Frid. The name was clumsy, but the chemistry was electric. They tried and failed to win the Swedish selection for Eurovision in 1973. Undeterred, they came back the next year with Waterloo, a glam pop anthem that won the 1974 Eurovision Song Contest and instantly made them international stars. Soon after, they came up with a far more memorable name, ABBA, an acronym using the initials of their first names. From that point forward, Benny was no longer just a pop musician. He was a sonic architect. He treated each song like a painting, layering instruments, setting up precise vocal harmonies, and experimenting with synthesizers way before anyone else did. In the studio, he was known for his patience and perfectionism, sometimes spending days reworking a single harmony until it felt emotionally right. He wasn't interested in what was popular. He was interested in what was timeless. Even as Agnia and Frida dazzled audiences in matching jumpsuits, and Bern penned clever, bittersweet lyrics, it was Benny who sculpted the emotional subtext of ABBA's music. His signature style blended brightness with depth, a Swedish melancholia masked in melody. Songs like Knowing Me, Knowing You, and Fernando carried this duality. Joy on the surface, sadness underneath. That was Benny's gift, not just to pop music, but to generations of listeners who felt something deeper in ABBA's seemingly simple songs. In fact, Benny Andersson wasn't building songs. He was building a kingdom where every chord and its silence, every note, would be important. And while the spotlight often shone elsewhere, the architecture of ABBA's sound was unmistakably his. Falling apart. Falling apart while climbing higher. For most of the 1970s, ABBA rode an unstoppable wave of fame. But as the band soared publicly, it began to erode privately. The unraveling wasn't sudden. It was subtle, slow, like a house weathered by time rather than destroyed by fire. The first crack came in 1979 when Byrne and Agnetha divorced. It was a deeply personal break, but one which the band tried to weather professionally. At the time, the group was working on their album Super Trooper, and though the songs retained their signature polish, the sessions began to carry a new heavy tone. 2 years later, Benny and Frida did the same. At one time in their careers, their relationship was referred to as fiery, symbiotic, a musical love story. Meeting as early as 1969, well before ABBA, they attained a relationship based on sound well before anything else. Frida once said in a 1975 interview that Benny understood her in a way no one else did. But studio understanding did not always translate into real life. The obsessive perfectionism that made Benny brilliant in the studio left little room for emotional availability at home. Expressive and emotional, Frida felt the growing absence. By 1981, Benny was openly admitting to having fallen in love with Mona Nerklet, a television producer he met during a broadcast special. He told the truth to Frida, but the damage was done. The split was quiet, professional even, but it carved a deep scar into the band's dynamic. The next studio and last album, The Visitors, which came out the same year, was a reflection of the emotional frost that was setting in. Songs such as When All Is Said and Done and Slipping Through My Fingers just dripped with unspoken pain. The sparkle was fading, and though the band would go on for another year, something essential had already gone. Confirming the silence we all felt. For more than 40 years, the story of ABBA's end had been defined not by explosive headlines but by a deafening silence. Unlike most legendary bands that go out with a farewell tour, a breakup press conference, or some final cathartic performance, ABBA simply vanished. The final single, Under Attack, was issued in December 1982. It didn't have the same magic as their previous hits. There was no follow-up album, no world tour, no curtain call, just a gradual fade into the mist of speculation and fan theories that would stretch across decades. Their absence left a void, and into that void came endless questions. Why did they stop when they were still so successful? Did money tear them apart? Was it personal drama or creative conflict? 4 years, none of the band members gave a definitive answer. Interviews remained vague, the word hiatus floating around, and their public appearances rare, cautiously polite. In many ways, ABBA became a myth frozen in time. The perfect pop group that simply ceased to exist without explanation. That all changed in November 2024. Benny Andersson, long known for his quiet introspection and avoidance of personal publicity, sat down for an interview with The Guardian. He didn't arrive with a rehearsed narrative. There was no publicist-crafted statement or airbrushed PR spin. Instead, Benny did something rare. He told the truth plainly. We were exhausted, he admitted. Marriages were falling apart. The music was starting to sound unnatural. We needed to stop to preserve ourselves. That simple, unsentimental statement hit harder than any scandal ever could. In a few words, Benny confirmed what many of its longtime fans had always suspected. The breakup hadn't come from betrayal or artistic feuding, it had come from emotional depletion. After so many years of performing and recording and maintaining the illusion of joy when in fact their personal lives were collapsing behind the scenes, the group was drained. Not dramatically, quietly, fatally. Then, in April 2025, he gave a follow-up interview to Billboard, offering even deeper insight. He described the band's final 2 years, 1981 and 1982, as uninspired workdays. What at one time had been vibrant collaboration had now turned into routine. He and Byrne were still writing, but without the same energy or purpose. The songs were coming more slowly. The studio sessions were shorter. Everything had started to feel like a job, not a passion. What spoke volumes was how Benny framed the group's decision to cease. He did not refer to it as a defeat, nor did he romanticize it. Instead, he called it an unraveling that was inevitable. It was no longer sustainable, he said. We could not keep pretending, neither to ourselves nor to each other. This acknowledgement wasn't just illuminating, it was healing. For decades, fans had heard that final ABBA albums like The Visitors felt different, more introspective, more melancholic. Songs like One of Us, Like an Angel Passing Through My Room, and The Day Before You Came didn't just sound sad. They were sad. There was a heaviness in the lyrics and arrangements that betrayed something deeper than pop trends. Listeners felt it, even if they couldn't name it. Benny's confession validated that feeling. The ache, the sense of something unraveling beneath the polished surface, wasn't a projection. It was real. What is striking is that none of the revelations that Benny spoke carried any bitterness. He did not blame Byrne, Agnetha, or Frida. Instead, he spoke about the band's end like it was a natural conclusion, like some beautiful machine that had reached the end of its cycle. We had done what we could do, he said. There was nothing left in us to give it honestly. For fans, that was closure they never knew they needed. The mystery wasn't mysterious anymore. The silence had a reason. And most importantly, the pain that had echoed through ABBA's final songs now had a name: exhaustion, emotional collapse, and the quiet necessity of walking away. Frida's journey with grief. Frida's journey of grief and royalty. Following ABBA's silent breakup, Frida went off on a journey not many would have predicted. In 1992, she married Prince Heinrich Russo-Royce of Plauen and joined European royalty. The press of Sweden went wild. How could this very woman who had once ruled the disco floors be living in a Swiss castle attending galas and banquets? But life as a princess wasn't the fairy tale it seemed to be. Frida struggled with the rigidity of aristocratic expectations. The spontaneity and emotion that defined her as a performer didn't fit into the structured world of royalty. And then came the deepest heartbreak of her life. In 1998, her daughter and Lisa L. died in a car accident in New York. She was just 30 years old. The loss was devastating. The woman who once sang to millions now sought silence, grief-stricken in her secluded home near Lake Geneva. The glitz of royalty, the fame of her past, it all paled in comparison to the emptiness left by her daughter's absence. And yet, it was Benny who had surfaced back then. Of all people, he called. They had a shared experience no one else would ever have. And in the silence of that reunion, there was solace. Not necessarily in reminiscing about the good old days, but in the understanding only two people who had watched it all crumble truly could. Whereas Frida had always needed the spotlight in order to feel seen, now she felt that it was enough to be remembered not by the world, but by one who had known her before it all. Returning without regret in 2018 after decades apart, the unthinkable happened. ABBA reunited and recorded 2 new songs. The announcement sent shockwaves around the music world. Not only did it break a silence that had been unbroken for 36 years, but it also marked the beginning of one of the most ambitious projects in music history, ABBA Voyage. By 2021, Benny and Byrne had written a studio album of the same name, and Benny had assumed full production control. But it was more than the music that changed. It was the performance model. ABBA Voyage wasn't a concert as such, it was a digital experience. Using motion capture and avatar technology, Benny and the team recreated the band's 1979 selves, performing live with a 10-piece band at a purpose-built arena in London. The show was an astonishing success. Since opening in May 2022, it has sold more than 1.3 million tickets, attracting fans from over 140 countries. Digital avatars did more than imitate, they surpassed expectation. Benny, the craftsman, didn't leave any minute sound design element unattended as he made sure the performance was natural, emotionally accurate, and technically perfect. And most astoundingly, the band turned down an offer of $1 billion for a live tour. They didn't want to chase the old high. Instead, they redefined performance on their terms. The avatars, like Benny himself, didn't need to be seen to be felt.